Hello everyone, this is an update for the Megabase that I'm building in Factorio. I've pretty much scrapped my old base. You can see the remnants of it right here in the mini map. I'm just in the middle of deconstructing it. I decided I didn't like the layout. When I started tessellating the modules, I realized that my RoboPort spacing was incorrect. This is the correct spacing here. This spacing actually has some annoying limitations, mainly that the big electric poles are just out of range, so I can't just stick one, in the same location, like say at the bottom of each RoboPort and expect it to connect. They're just barely out of range. So I do have to find ways of dealing with the power distribution. Granted, we decided to go with the Bob's mods on this server, and there are some power poles that have a larger reach. The big power pole Mark II has a reach of 40 instead of 30, so that's an option. But just to go over what I've done, I've I've changed the layout. The overall layout is more or less going to be a giant hexagonal pattern, which kind of mimics the lower level pattern that I've got going on with the individual modules. I've tried to orient things in such a way that things that are requesting resources are relatively nearby. I've got my I've got my 10 and my aluminum and lead processing down here, and my copper's up here along with the copper cable. I know putting copper cable on any kind of transport system, whether it's belts or logistics robots, is kind of a waste because they get made so quickly, and you're making 2 copper cable for 1 copper plate. It's a lot more efficient just to transport the copper plate and make the copper cable locally, but I decided not to do that just for mainly aesthetic purposes. So there is a bit of a bottleneck unless I seriously jack up the number of logistics robots I have. I currently have 3,200 logistics robots in the system, which seems to be adequate for the most part. I'm going to have to increase it eventually. But I'm just going to go over how I've changed the operation of the combinators and whatnot for the circuit conditions. If I go to, for instance, these electric motors here, their combinators are being set, if I can remember where I stuck these. That's for the regular motors. They're being set somewhere. I just can't see straight, apparently. That's another thing I have to do is move all of these around so that the combinators are in an easy to reach location. Oh, here it is right here. So what I've done is, I can probably show you with the belts. What I've done is I've set a negative value for the output of the constant combinator. So if I want to keep 4,000 in the system, I put a negative 4,000 in there, or in the case of the electric motors, negative 12,000. And that is fed into the decider combinators, which look at that signal, and it merges that negative with the output from all of these passive provider chests and sums them. And if it comes out to be less than 0, it means that there's less in the system than I've requested, and it outputs a signal equal to the resource I'm looking for. In this case, it outputs a transport belt signal at 1, and then all of the input inserters pay attention to that signal. So that makes it a little bit easier when it comes to making requests. I don't have to remember what letter corresponds to what resource. It's just graphically, I want belts, I set the belts to negative value of whatever I want, and it makes it. So it seems to be working pretty well. The base layout is coming along. I've moved things around a few times, and I'm probably going to continue moving them. I'll move over here to my chemical processing section. There are a couple things that you'll notice here, namely that a lot of this stuff appears to be powered off, and that's more or less by design. The processing for instance, the ammonia is on a circuit condition as well, and it removes power when there's no need for these machines to be on, because in the case of these chemical plants, they have a drain of 7 kilowatts, as you can see on the right hand panel. So while these are using 300 and almost 400 kilowatts when they're running because of the speed modules on here, that 7 kilowatts times 4 machines, you know, that's 28 kilowatts that I could save by not having them there. So those all disconnect, and it's the same way for most of this. I've done the same thing for quite a bit, like the salt the salt production over here. These have a drain of 7 or 6 kilowatts, and these shut off as well when there's no need to run them. You'll see them occasionally kick on. So that's more or less what I've got going on here. The liquid plant is kind of a pain just because of the layout, and I just decided to say screw it with regards to trying to keep my nice neat layout with regards to the rest of the base, because the chemical stuff is just a mess. But I've got all the trains these stations are set up with the logistics train network mod, and their trains won't run unless there's a need. In this case, I just got a pop-up saying no sodium hydroxide found. I have a incineration plant located to the south of my base where leftover sodium hydroxide goes, because I don't currently have a need for it. But this right here is the chemical chain for producing fertilizer. It's not just going to be used for fertilizer, but that was the first thing I ended up needing to make, so I just put the chemical chain in that order. So I've got my ammonia here, my nitric oxide there, my nitrogen dioxide here, nitric acid is here, and then finally the fertilizer, which needs the nitric acid as well as ammonia in order to be produced. So if I increase the demand here for the fertilizer, and say I want to make 8,000 of it instead of 6, it'll start producing, and then what you'll see is that these plants will start to come online as there's a chemical need for their products, and you can see the switch here is just intermittently turning on as it's draining. Same for this plant. It'll go all the way back to the beginning. You'll see them just making power connections intermittently. For the most part, the system stays offline unless there's a need for it. So if I go back to the main base, I don't really have too much as far as end products being made yet. I've got the red and green science packs. The science packs, the green ones are a little bit more involved with Bob's mods. They do require quite a bit, and a lot of that is right here. The regular motors, the electric motors, which are used for making the regular belts, as well as up here the burner inserters and the regular inserters, and of course the regular inserters and the belts being used to make the green science packs. So if I increase the count here, whoops, instead of negative 6,000, just set this to negative 8,000. This will pretty much kick the whole thing into action, and there's a significant power draw, especially with these recharge points here from Bob's mods. So I'll need to likely increase the solar array that we've got on this power grid to make up for that. But you can see here there's quite a bit of activity, and there's a lot of waste here as a result of having these copper cables going over the logistics network. But I'm not really sure I'm going to localize this. I might eventually do it just if it becomes unbearable as far as processing speed, but for the time being it seems like it's working alright for me, so I'm going to keep it as is. So that's pretty much the basics on what I've got going on right now. Hopefully by next update I'll have quite a bit more being produced, and have a little bit more set up, especially with the train network. Ideally, what I want to do is be able to set up one train depot per remote outpost, and have remote access set up for each of them, so requests can be made for pretty much any item that this base produces, and a train schedule will automatically be generated, and supplies will be delivered to the remote outpost. And that should keep my friends happy while they're rebuilding their bases as a result of the recipe changes from Bob's Mods, because it pretty much rendered everything useless because of all the recipe changes. So, anyways, thanks for watching. Keep tuned in, and I'll post some more videos here, and we'll see how this progresses. Thanks for watching.